think of when you think about God? It's a big question, I know. But when I say the word God, what comes to your mind? A lot of people think about an old man, white beard, maybe a flowing white robe, sitting on a throne somewhere in heaven. Well, without a doubt, I think this picture that some folks have of God is related to the visions of God in the Hebrew Scriptures, and particularly this passage from Isaiah. In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord sitting on a throne, high and lofty, and the hem of his robe filled the temple. It goes on to give us one of the parts of our Eucharistic liturgy. These seraphs, celestial beings, are shouting back and forth to each other the Sanctus, right? Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory. And so we say in our liturgy that we join our voices with these angels and archangels and all the company of heaven who forever sing that hymn. Isaiah paints a picture of a majestic God and a very personified God. This Sunday is the first Sunday after Pentecost and also Trinity Sunday. It's one of the only feasts of the church that is in memory of a doctrine and not of an event or a person. But interestingly enough, the Old Testament doesn't expressly teach the doctrine of the Trinity. There are some foreshadowings of a way of understanding God that hint at a single God with a plural nature, but nothing that would constitute what the Christian church teaches as the Trinity now. In the Old Testament, God was one God and heavily personified. That is, he was given the qualities of a person. God inspired holy fear, a humility in response to God's total power and majesty. And so when Isaiah writes about this vision, he cries out, "Woe is me, I am lost. I am a man of unclean lips." This is pretty much exactly the response that we would expect from a devout Jewish prophet. The Jewish understanding of God was all about God's overwhelming holiness and power. One of the Hebrew names for God, Yahweh, is actually a version that had vowels added so that it could be pronounced. The Jews considered the name of God so holy that it shouldn't and really couldn't be pronounced. The God of the Old Testament was out there sitting on a divine throne, a person, but very impersonal, majestically out of reach, and not to be messed with if you knew what was good for you. In our day and in our time, there are as many perceptions of God as there are groups that claim a belief in God. But the average person that you meet on any given day would probably think and talk about God sort of in terms of being a person located in heaven. God is someone that you have to be good for. Just like the famous sign on I-65, if you live anywhere in the Gulf Coast, you've probably seen. It says, "Go to church or the devil will get you." Most people put God on the other end of that equation. Go to church and God will be happy with you. If you're good enough, our majestic granddaddy God will love you and give you what you pray for and let you into heaven. But if not, what's that phrase we use? God forbid. If you're not good enough, if you don't make the cut, then there are all manner of opinions about what happens after that. I've been in ministry in various capacities for somewhere around 25 years, and I've lost count of how many people I've talked to who are convinced that God is punishing them for something they have done along the way, or even worse, for some way that they just intrinsically are. How many people have I heard over the years say, "Well, I'm too far gone now. God is never going to love me." after everything I've done. I can remember being a young teenager, growing up in a particularly conservative evangelical tradition that shall remain nameless, and thinking that if something went wrong in my life, well, that's probably because I did this thing that I shouldn't have done, and that's what I get. And to be honest, sometimes I still fall into that sort of transactional thinking. If I'm good enough, if I get it right enough, then God will love me. Then I'll be close to God, and God will be close to me. So I hope I'm not the first one to break this news to you. God is not a person. I hesitate to say a whole lot about what God is because it seems safer to say what God is not. And at least from a New Testament perspective, God is not a person. This is a concept that is really difficult to get across to people because the church for hundreds of years has portrayed God like a person. And part of that is because we need some way to grasp on to the hugeness of the idea of God in a way that we can begin to understand. In the Gospel of John, we read that God is spirit, and true worshipers must worship God in spirit and in truth. We've become familiar with the Greek word behind spirit here in the last few weeks. Pneuma, with a silent P. Breath in some instances. And in this particular instance, it's not outside of the realm of possibility to translate spirit, pneuma, as essence. God is essence. But not just an essence among all the other essences. God is the essence from which all other things have essence. This idea is even in the book of the Acts of the Apostles. We call it Acts for short. From the Apostle Paul, when he addresses some philosophical heavy hitters in Athens at Mars Hill, he was explaining the gospel story to some Greeks who were unfamiliar basically with Jesus or the concept of the Jewish God. And Paul gives his famous line, "In God we live and move and have our being." And when you think about it, it's a pretty big stretch for this Jewish holy man to talk about God in such personal, intimate terms. And yet, there are glimpses of Paul's intimate message even in the text from Isaiah in the Sanctus. We read that the whole earth is full of God's glory. More literally translated, the holy weight of God. And the original Hebrew carries this beautiful positive connotation with that definition. So the air, the ground, the trees, the animals, you and me, all are filled with the sweet, holy weight of God. Talking about the Trinity is a bit like trying to explain color to someone who was born blind. What do you say about the color blue to someone who has never seen color or seen anything at all for that matter? The best we can sometimes do is to say that blue sounds like the ocean waves. Blue feels like the breeze on a clear, cloudless day. Or blue tastes like fresh blueberry muffins in the morning while you're still trying to wake up. In some ways, these descriptions all make a little sense and get at a little bit of what blue is, but in order to know the essence of blue, you have to see blue. And to make it even more difficult, some people see colors differently, and color, even in itself, is just a particle reflecting back the light that hits it. So none of us would know anything about color at all were it not for the light that reveals it. The Trinity, like God, is not a math problem to be solved. It's not primarily something to be figured out. The Trinity is a mystery to be enjoyed. God is a mystery to be experienced. God is an essence that is completely unavoidable, holy, like the sigh of a newborn baby, yet closer to us than the very air we breathe. Majestic as the highest mountain peak, yet fully present in you and in me as we stumble to the shower in the morning. So I encourage you, let the experience of God wash over you. Every moment of our existence is brimming with the essence of God if we will only open ourselves to see, to hear, to touch, to taste, and to smell, to be comfortable under the awe-inspiring, holy, and beautiful weight of God. God is not far from you today. Your feelings may tell you that you are far from God. But even the ability to have feelings at all is evidence of the gift of God in and around you. So rest. Rest today in the comfort of the idea that God's essence is like the field where the flowers and the weeds of your life grow. God is the rain that quenches and the sun that nourishes, and in God